Greetings and welcome to week 5 unit 1 related to psychomotor and affective domains. In the previous unit we understood the nature and usefulness of taxonomy tables which belong to the category of revised Bloom's taxonomy and revised Bloom-Vincenti taxonomy as well. Now we look at the other two domains, namely psychomotor and affective domains. We will try to understand the nature of these two domains in this unit. A psychomotor domain, it includes physical movement, coordination and use of the motor skill areas. Okay. You work with your hands and feet, and you require the right kind of skills that you depending on the kind of activity that you are doing. Development of these skills requires practice and is measured in terms of speed, precision, distance, procedures or techniques in execution. At early childhood, the development of psychomotor skills becomes a very critical thing, like walking and balancing and so on. There is a special type of training that needs to be given to small kids, but the role of psychomotor activities is limited in engineering programs as offered at present. The level of psychomotor skills that you demand from engineering students in various branches is very limited, though it does not have to be that way. You can redesign your engineering programs where some psychomotor skills are also imparted. But the psychomotor activities become important and even dominant in courses in programs in theatre, music, painting, sports, medicine, nursing, dentistry, emergency medical services and so on. There are so many programs where psychomotor domain becomes very important. The graduates of those programs have to have the right kind of skills. And there is no universal taxonomy of psychomotor domain fully accepted. You have Simpson's taxonomy offered in 1966 as 7 levels. Kibler, Barker and Miles in 1970 talked about 4 levels. R.H. Dave in 1970 suggested 5 levels, and Anita Harrow in 1972 offered 6 levels, and Pierce and Gray in 1977 suggested 6 levels. We will look at Pierce and Gray taxonomy of psychomotor domain. You can say that is our preferred taxonomy based on our survey. Pierce and Gray taxonomy, they recognize the distinction between sensory inputs to the brain, the cognitive or affective processing of the inputs and the consequent transmission of the outputs. There are 3 stages that are involved. You have sensory inputs which everyone will accept, and then that information is processed by the brain either cognitively or affectively, both, and then it creates to the output mechanism like your hands, fingers, feet and so on, and the transmission of these outputs plays a dominant role. So what happens, whether the input mechanism will have to be right, we will assume that, but there is certain amount of cognitive and affective processing. The level of cognitive processing can change, and that is used by Pierce and Gray as classification of or for the taxonomy of psychomotor domain. The description of psychomotor classification model utilizes degree of cognition as the basic sorting factor. Okay. Now we talk about psychomotor perceiving, activating, executing, maneuvering, psychomotor judging and psychomotor creating. These are the 6 levels that we do. As we go along that from first level to 6th level, the amount of cognitive activity kind of increases. For example, psychomotor perceiving means you have sensory transmission, that part is functioning properly, like whether it is listening or touch or whatever inputs that we get from the eye and so on will have to be right. Physio-functional maintenance, okay. That means if it is proper, then you are perceiving something happening, and then you activate either through some physical output. You look at something, let us say somebody throws a ball at you, you hold by hand. So you see somebody how first of all during psychomotor perceiving, you are observing how the ball is travelling, and depending on the speed how the receiver is putting his hand out and how he is holding his hand, he is perceiving all that. Then what you do, you also try to do the same thing, and you mimic when whatever you have observed, and then you deliberately model, in the sense that how you put your fingers out, where you put your hands against your face and all that, depending on where the ball is coming, that is activating. You have to activate that first. Then you actually execute. Task execution, operational execution and skilled execution. There are levels in that. You first somehow put your hand out correctly, but then you still may not be able to hold it. You operationally have to execute that, and then you should also do it skillfully. I am sure when you observe your cricketers, they spend enormous amount of time in practicing fielding, which is nothing but catching the ball or blocking the ball, okay, and throwing it back again. So that is execution, that is skillful execution is part of it. Then you maneuver, that is also part of learning, that is you now inspect your own skills. You observe a more skilled person and you select a particular sequence of activities, and that is part of maneuvering. That is, depending on your convenience or your liking or your body, you kind of select, this is the way I am going to do. Then psychomotor judging. Now establishing performance criteria and performance judging, this is what the coach will have to do. Coach will have some criteria in his mind to actually say whether the person who is practicing has the right, is doing it right or not. He will judge, and he will finally judge the performance as well. Psychomotor creating, now what you do, you combine skills and you have a different way of doing things. You invent a new method of doing things of your own, and that is psychomotor creation. So all these activity, I am sure the levels of psychomotor activity you can actually see in let us say in any kind of game that you talk about, whether it is tennis, cricket or any other game, you will be able to see that. Now To describe any of these activities, you are likely to use these action verbs and maybe more. Bend, grasp, handle, operate, reach, relax, shorten, stretch, and so on. You can do that. Any of these action verbs, you can use it. Now some examples or samples if you want to look at, though I have described in the case of catching a ball. Perceiving, reading visual cues in surveying instruments, in coming down to our engineering programs. So these maybe you are doing it very intuitively without conscious effort, but you are perceiving that. Reading visual cues in surveying instruments, leveling, bubble, and so on. Feeling vibration in a faulty machine to locate the problem. Activating, positioning body to take a leveling reading. Grasping a wrench and preparing to apply force. Executing, mixing cement manually to specified consistency. Tightening bolts using torque wrench. Maneuvering, operating a CNC machine and adjusting feed rate in real time. Operating a theodolite and smoothly tracking target markers. Judging, evaluating surface finish after machining and redoing operation if needed. Rechecking alignment of formwork before pouring concrete. Creating, crafting a new tool for specific manufacturing constraints. Innovatively using local materials to build a structurally sound test model. These are examples. As you can see, judging and creating are two different activities. Like for example, in the case of let us say judging diving, okay, diving is a sport. Judging diving or figurative skating, if you look at, there are multiple judges, 4 or 5, and if you look at most of the times the marks that they give, even singing performance, most of the times the marks the judge gives are very close to one another. Out of 10 if you look at, one may give 8 or 8.5, 9 like that, but somebody gives 9 and another person gives 2. Such a thing does not happen. So the judging itself is a psychomotor activity, psychomotor judging you are doing, and that only a few people can be good judges. Not everybody can become, even if you are a good performer or you are a good singer, but not every singer may not be able to judge other singer properly. Okay. So as you can see, judging is a very important activity in many of the activities, like as we mentioned, in all kinds of sports or theatre, judging or singing and all that. Now coming to affective domain, it is most commonly associated with feelings and emotions. It is usually displayed in the form of positive or negative reaction to a given event, objects, behaviors and policies or situations. Our first, whenever you listen to something or whenever you see something, your first level reaction is either positive or negative. You are not measuring anything, you just feel, for example, you are disinterested, that is negative reaction, or you do not like the way somebody is singing or somebody is speaking or the topic that he is presenting, you do not like it, that is all, or you like it, both can happen. Affective behaviors are accompanied by varying degrees of feelings. Now first level is positive or negative, then the next thing is various degrees of feeling, reflect distinct approach or avoidance predispositions. Now what you do, depending on the level of feeling, degree of feeling, either you decide what kind of approach you want to take. Either you completely avoid or you want to deal with it. So that depends on your predisposition, and generally person's past experience in interacting with environment shapes the nature and scope of affective responses. So in a classroom, if you have 40 students, 60 students, each student has gone through his own life's experiences in how he interacted with his own environment. So obviously you cannot expect all students to have the same kind of affective responses. Somebody is indifferent in the class, somebody hates what is happening in the class, somebody is lukewarm in his response, somebody actively participates because he likes it. So you can have all kinds of variations, and teacher has to first acknowledge that such things happen and it is normal. And researchers have always believed that non-cognitive factors and skills are equally or even more important than the cognitive aspects in educative process and in employment. For example, even in employment, people will first ask, are likely to ask, are you a good team member? That depends on your affective domain response. Whereas in actual educative process, if you don't like, if you are unable to pay attention, there is no question of cognitive dimension coming in at all. Your affective factor will straight away block the input coming in. You are indifferent, so you look elsewhere, or you don't even want to listen what is happening. So affective factors are key factors, and they determine the student's response right through. For example, factors like grit, tenacity, curiosity, attitude, self-concept, self-efficacy, anxiety coping strategies, motivation, perseverance, confidence are among those frequently referred to as non-cognitive factors. They are not completely independent of one another. They overlap considerably. We are not going into how to reduce that number of lot of work has been done in trying to come up with, some people have come up with 5 factors, some people have come up with 3, and so on. And many of these factors will fall into affective domain. Okay? And affective domain refers to or relates to emotions, attitudes, appreciations, values such as enjoying, conserving, respecting and supporting. And how are the affective behaviors actually? They are demonstrated by indicating attitudes of awareness, interest, attention, concern and responsibility. Okay. And their ability to listen and respond in interactions with others. For example, if you are indifferent in a discussion, you are indifferent and you will not participate. That means you are not affectively you are not interested in participating there. Ability to demonstrate those attitudinal characteristics or values which are appropriate to the test situation and the field of study are identified by words such as like, dislike, attitude, value, belief, feeling, interest, appreciation and characterization. You can use these, you can treat them as action verbs if you want to identify an affective behavior. And now Peirce-Gray taxonomy of affective domain. Here also there were several affective domain taxonomies were proposed. As we said, we prefer Peirce-Gray taxonomy, even though in our opinion it has its own limitations, which we will try to address in the following unit. These are given as perceive, react, conform, validate, affective judge and affective create. And Peirce and Gray, what they have done is they have arranged them depending on the amount of cognitive activity that is involved. For example, affective create will have highest level of cognitive activity, whereas perceive is the lowest level cognitive activity. Okay. Now Peirce-Gray taxonomy of affective domain, perceive, that is emotive implanting and response setting. That is, you first thing is your emotive implanting, that is you are at least willing to pay attention. You have not paid the attention, you are willing to pay the attention and you are ready. A response setting, now I am willing to listen. Okay. That is the first part. Then react, you are now emoting as well. That is, after listening to what is presented, yes, I like or dislike, that you emote and you recognize that how you are reacting, and then you control your own reactions. Okay, how you want to do it. Then conform. Okay, artificial attitude means, yes, it is necessary to positively respond to this. You are not convinced of that fully, but your artificial attitude, it is required, that is why you are accepting, and you are also consistent in reacting to that. And then you rationalize your attitude. You may still not like it, but this is the way you have to react, you have to respond, that you are convinced. Then you validate, that is, now you examine your values and whatever value that is being proposed, you accept those values, you validate, you are rationally you are validating, that is where the cognitive activity comes in. And then affective judge, establishing value criteria and value judging. You have to judge to finally say, yes, I am with it and it is going to be mine as well. I am going to behave accordingly because I am convinced of that and I am making it my own. And then affective create. Then what you do, depending on your other values, you integrate, because it cannot be, whatever new things that you have acquired cannot be in contradiction with the your other values. So you kind of integrate the new value with your existing values, and you are comfortable with that. You do not have to keep on carrying in a contradictory manner. And based on this, you may come with your own inspirational insight to even propose to the community, saying that this is how things need to be done, these are the reasons for it. So these are the 6 levels of affective domain. Now there is a parallel track that has been happening for the past 30 years, especially initiated by David Goleman. He wrote a book more than 30 years ago called Emotional Intelligence, and subsequently built on that considerably, which we will look at, Taxonomy as per emotional intelligence is knowing one's emotions, managing emotions, motivating oneself, recognizing emotions in others, and handling relations. All these activities are required for a student or for a professional. Okay. Now some action verbs that if you want: accept, attempt, challenge, defend, dispute, join, judge, praise. You can coin more words if you are interested to communicate something. Now some samples of affective domain activities. I am taking it from engineering kind of engineering programs. Perceiving is, let us assume that you have a course, some kind of a service learning course some institutes have offered, like development and so on, and as a part of that you are interacting with some community. So noticing community concern during a site survey for road widening. Okay, as a civil engineer you are required to create a plan for road widening. While doing that you are sensitive to community concerns during a survey for road widening, or recognizing a teammate's frustration during a group project. One person is not able to contribute or do his activity, so that person is frustrated. You are able to recognize that he is frustrated for some reason, he is not strictly avoiding the work, but he is frustrated for a different reason. Then reacting, engaging in discussions on sustainability in urban planning. You are engaging in discussions, that is reacting. Expressing concern over e-waste during a lab session. Then conforming, consistently following safety protocols without being reminded. That becomes part of my I conform, whether I like them or not, but I conform. Routinely minimizing waste in fabrication projects. You do not waste materials, that becomes your nature. As I said, you automatically do that, you do not waste material. And then validating, choosing open source development to promote transparency. Some software engineers want to work only in open domain. Yes, it is not remunerative like a professional one, but you believe, that is your belief, that is the open source development. Taking initiative to address environmental impact in project reports. You can be indifferent, but you are now validating your own value. Judging, weighing user convenience against security in software design. User convenience is and security, these are two aspects. So you are weighing one against the other, so you are making a judgment. Prioritizing worker safety over faster assembly line performance. Okay, you want more output, you are trying to make a faster assembly, but because of that there can be worker safety issue. I am sure you would have all seen the old movie on the faster assembly performance by, I am not getting the name, Charlie Chaplin, I think it is a kid. Creating ethical design guidelines for emerging AI systems. If you want to, I am sure that is one of the current issues throughout the world. What are the ethical design guidelines that you need to follow in developing AI systems? It is a major discussion point, but people are also in a hurry to design or to bring into the market AI products, and in that process you may skirt the ethical design guidelines. Leading a student movement for sustainable labs. Okay. So, these are samples of affective domain activities. Now, we summarize, we are going to look at affective domain a little more in detail from a slightly different perspective, namely emotional intelligence. But the three domains of learning, cognitive, affective and psychomotor activities, are not truly independent of one another. This is for our convenience, that is how brain reacts. It did not say this part of the brain is concerned with cognitive, this part of the brain is concerned with affective and so on. So, higher levels of affective and psychomotor activities involve more and more cognitive activities. That we have mentioned. That is why we propose the use of Peirce Gray taxonomy. Instruction needs to pay attention to these dependencies, especially to integrating affective elements into cognitive activities in engineering courses. A teacher will have to be sensitive to affective reactions. If he is not, he will just label everybody saying that he doesn't want to work, that is why he is not putting his effort. It is just not mere simple. If you want to help all your students, the teacher will have to be sensitive to the affective dimension of learning, okay? And hopefully we will address that more specifically in the next unit. Now, we can capture now all the three domains like this, which we have learning has domains including cognitive domain, affective domain, psychomotor domain and spiritual domain. We will come to that also a little later, and this we have already seen. Cognitive domain has processes create, evaluate, analyze, apply, understand and remember, and has second dimension, namely knowledge categories. It will include factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge and metacognitive knowledge, and some knowledge categories specific to engineering, which we due to Vincenti, fundamental design concepts, criteria and specifications, practical constraints and design instrumentalities. And in the case of affective domain, has major categories as per Peirce and Gray: affective perceive, react, conform, validate, affective judge and affective create. And we are also combining it with the emotional intelligence as domains: knowing one's own emotions, managing emotions, motivating oneself and recognizing emotions in others, handling relations and so on. And psychomotor domain has, as due to Peirce and Gray, psychomotor perceive, activate, execute, maneuver, psychomotor judge and psychomotor create. And you have spiritual domain. We will leave it at this. We will address it fully in one of the later units. So, that gives you a picture of all the four domains of learning, and all are, whether you actually officially acknowledge them or not, they are all there in any given situation. The context can be widely different from one another depending on the students, depending on the management, depending on the physical environment, depending on the teacher. They will vastly differ, but all the four domains, things are happening in all the four domains at the same time. Okay. And if a teacher is sensitive to this, possibly he will work out in his own context what is the best thing to do and facilitate better student learning. And in the next unit, we will try to understand the relationship between affective activities and emotional intelligence. And thank you for your attention.